engage, disrupt, adapt, repeat. You're listening to Pure Reinvention, the podcast for curious leaders, innovators, and people who are ready for the next level and beyond.
I am really pleased today to be able to have a conversation with Larry Alexander, Chief Executive Officer of the Detroit Metro Convention and Visitors Bureau. I've been fortunate to have been able to spend time with Larry and for Larry to share with me his observations on what is happening in the city of Detroit most recently as it has gone through its reinvention. Larry has a very unique perspective on the city. He's been a key city leader, and I'm very happy that he's going to share some of his thoughts with us today. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Mike. Pleasure to be with you.
Larry, as you and I have spent some time in the city of Detroit, and certainly as I've leaned on you for your experiences within the city of Detroit, one of the real key characteristics that struck me as we initially began our relationship together was you sharing with me the important characteristic that Detroit would need to have to deal with, and that was you felt bankruptcy for the city was necessary for it to start to reinvent itself. Can you share with me why you felt that was so important for the city to have that decision made for it to move forward, and how you've perhaps seen other examples of where there's been a significant reason for a business or an entity or even a person to change?
Sure, okay. Well, first of all, I think it's important to say that there's no question that through a bankruptcy, a lot of people suffer. Individuals suffer, organizations suffer, reputation suffers, financial constituents that are part of this destination suffer. So I don't take anything away from the fact that this is something that's really hard for individuals and companies and organizations to go through. However, I've always believed that if you look at where the city has been and look at where it needs to go, this was a critical component to allow the city to reinvent itself and to basically get a clean balance sheet in order to move forward. There's no question there were a lot of poor decisions that have been made in the past, and this is or was an opportunity to right some of those wrongs, to go back and correct some of those poor decisions, and to get the city on the right path for the future. Let me digress for a minute and say that this is not the first time Detroit has reinvented itself. When we were conducting our strategic analysis to prepare for ASAE, we uncovered, as you may well remember, that about every 100 years, Detroit does reinvent itself. We're at that 100-year mark again, with celebrating 313 years this year. And you can go back in time and see the many times that Detroit has gone through this process. And so here we are at this stage, reinventing ourselves financially. Also, when you look at the groundswell of new businesses, new economic growth that's taking place, new investment that's being made in the city, the changes taking place at our convention center and M1 Rail and the riverfront development and what Dan Gilbert has done around Campus Martius Park. It's all just this groundswell of new creative things that are happening to give this city an opportunity to be different, to move into the next generation of what the city will have to offer and how it will attract residents, how it will attract visitors, how it will create itself for the next millennium.
Larry, do you feel that the bankruptcy was the signal that needed to be sent out into the marketplace, that now we know where the bottom is, and now the investors, as you started to describe them, the people that are putting energy and money into the city now felt like they knew where things were and they could start investing knowing it was going to start building back up again?
I think there's no question that was important and it had to happen. You don't, until you hit rock bottom, you can't rebuild, you can't rebound. And I think, unfortunately, the city had to hit that rock bottom stage so that it could rebound and come back and be stronger.
Yes.
And there's no question that this city will be stronger as a result of this. I've also said that even through this process, Detroit's being a leader. When you look at other destinations, other cities, other states that are looking at Detroit and quietly saying, is Detroit going to make this happen? Is Detroit going to get through this? Because if we do, when we do, not if, but when we do, I think there'll be many other cities and some states that say if Detroit did it, we should consider doing that.
A very interesting perspective that somehow in this reinvention process that we are learning about and beginning to see has a lot of application, one of the things it does tend to do is it tends to take the new entity and put it in a leadership role. Because where it might have been struggling before, when you reinvent it, especially if you reinvent it into a new space, as you're suggesting Detroit is doing, it now goes all of a sudden from being perhaps a laggard to a key leader showing the way for many others. And those are very different characteristics for a business or a city to exhibit.
True, very true.
So in light of then having these new characteristics of leadership that start to emerge as one of the roles in reinvention, share your thoughts regarding how some of the key owners, some of the key investors of the city, how important it is that there be ownership of reinvention, ownership to take the entity, in this case the city of Detroit, forward, and make those investments and make it a comfortable or safe place for others to then follow with their investments.
Well, first of all, there has to be an acceptance that the past wasn't working. And I think you find that whether it's on the political side or the corporate side, there was an acceptance of reality. And the reality was that the past had to change. So once you reach that state, then the next natural progression is, well, what needs to be done differently and how do we approach it differently to build a better foundation or a new foundation for the future. And that's what you see being done around this city. New foundations are being put in place not only on the political side, but the corporate side, the civic side. There's a new corporation that's underway between not only people in the downtown core, but in the region as a whole, to be sure that the core city is strong and that it is progressive and moves ahead in the right direction. There's an acceptance that you can't be 1.8 million people in population anymore, and that the 139 square miles that the city used to occupy is not there to be occupied anymore. So 700,000, smaller city with a tighter package can be a good thing, and is a good thing moving forward. So you come out smaller, but stronger and better, and you take on new cultural attractions or assets. You take on new manufacturing bases. You create new industry segments that have the opportunity to provide for that growth and to propel the city in a new direction.
So now I'm hearing you say that there's a fine line or a natural progression between something under stress, in this case the city of Detroit and going through its bankruptcy, to then to a place where it creates tremendous new opportunity for entrepreneurs and others to start to invest and grow things. But I want to make sure I understood you correctly. The rules on how those businesses will move forward in the future are not the same as the rules of the past.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the areas in which we really have to make a fundamental adjustment in our thought process, is how fundamentally different those rules really are. Can you spend a few minutes and really talk about how different the rules of the future are compared to the worlds of the past?
Well, I don't know if we have enough time to go through all of them, but there's no question that the world is changing around us on a daily basis. When you look at how things have changed here in Detroit, and the way that things are being done today than how they were done in the future, it's vastly different. And that's what's going to help propel this city forward, to make it an example of reinvention. The entrepreneurs that are coming in and the startup businesses that are underway, The capital investment that's being made here and the metrics that are being put in place to measure how those dollars are being evaluated toward success measures. The political leadership and how they're working cohesively as one unit to be sure that no matter what side of the aisle you're on, that the strongest urban center in the state of Michigan doesn't suffer and doesn't die, that it is prepared to move ahead for the future. So all of these pieces are being evaluated, restructured, when different people come to the table, to be sure that the success measures that will be used for the future are not the ones that were used in the past, and that the future looks bright.
We know that one of the most difficult transitions for people to make during this process is the dramatic new way of thinking that has to take place. As a key leader in this city, what kind of characteristics do you start to see emerging in the leaders of the future, that as you look at the leadership characteristics and you start to give advice and guidance to new and emerging leaders on how to lead in this new time period, what are those key characteristics that you're encouraging those people to understand and embrace?
Well, one of the first ones is the importance of diversity and understanding how diversity brings much different thinking to the table. It's important to have a number of different groups be a part of the reinvention process because no matter what cultural base you're from, no matter what your cultural background, you have a knowledge base. And it's the blending and the melding of those knowledge bases in the reinvention process that helps the city or any organization move forward at a much rapid pace.
You know, that's very interesting because associations, communities, are in many ways, they attract together. Historically, they have attracted together because they've been the same. And now what you're describing is the real richness of success going forward is actually to encourage what we don't do naturally ourselves, which is create the kind of diversity of thought and experience necessary to take advantage of the collective wisdom of the group, not the same wisdom.
Exactly. And I think if you go back and if someone conducted a study and did a comparison of growth, whether it be in organizations or businesses or cities, and compared those that have embraced diversity and the cultural richness that diversity brings to the table, both in knowledge, expertise, financial review, whatever it may be, to those that have not, I think you'll find that those that have embraced that have grown and moved ahead much faster than those that haven't.
So how does one begin to embrace diversity? It's one thing to say, I embrace diversity. I think you would agree with me. It's different to behave and embrace diversity. Can you share with me how one starts to embrace the behavior necessary to be open to diversity? Because they're different than words.
It's much different than words. It's very easy to say, yes, we embrace diversity. It's another thing to live it and implement it. And the implementation factor is, I think, the critical components for success. You embrace it by at least accepting that it is reality, and it has to be part of your foundation. It has to be part of your culture, your business culture, no matter what it may be. And once you get to that point, then it's being sure that every individual in the organization is willing to accept it and be a part of the diversity process in their thinking, in their mindset, in the hiring practices, whatever it may be. But it really is being sure that the culture embraces it and understands it. The implementation then becomes kind of secondary. It's not something you have to push to make happen. It's a natural progression process. And I think that's what makes the diversity process real, when it is just part of the natural ongoing discussion and the reality of an organization or a business that takes place.
What you're describing for me is something that I've been very interested in. It seems like many leaders feel like one of their roles is to control. What you're what you are teaching me today is that one of the key roles of a leader is to let go and allow for the differences to propel the business, the association, or the city forward, and to not control the outcome. Let the outcome be a natural development of the diversity that you've put into the business.
And Mike, I would describe that as a major key component between leadership and management. Leadership is setting the direction, opening the door, communicating the goal, and allowing individuals to go through that door and accomplish the goals in their own way, as long as they hit the goal. Management is controlling the way it's done, how it's done, and controlling every step along the way. It takes a lot longer and a lot more work than the leadership aspect. Leadership is a major distinction, and that's the way to move forward at a greater pace.
Larry, I want to wrap up our conversation by asking you to explain how you have been able to regionalize some activities within the city as opposed to historically how decisions have been made. You are leading a regional authority and to dramatically change a significant asset within the city. My understanding from you is that this change has had a lot of significance on why this asset is now moving forward at a very rapid pace and will be one of the real key cornerstones of the city as it reinvents itself. I'm not as much interested in the asset as I am in how you were able to create this more regional, diverse decision-making model that allowed for people to take ownership, which I understood was a key in reinvention.
Yes.
The new deliverable, and actually, in a way, diluted out control by creating a more regional decision-making body. Yet, I believe you're going to tell me it really works.
You phrase that very nicely. But yes, I happen to be the state appointee and the chair for the Detroit Regional Convention Facility Authority. It is a 5-member authority that was put in place to oversee and guide the transformation of our convention center. There's an appointee from each of the counties, Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb, one from the city and one from the state. One of the key components in the legislation is that all 5 of us have to agree. It can't be a simple 3-2 or 4-1 vote. If all 5 don't agree, it doesn't get done. The way we have moved forward is that we fully recognize the value and the skill set of what each individual brings to the table. Not necessarily what county they're from or what geographical footprint they represent, but the skill set that they bring to the total as a whole. We have an individual from labor. We have an individual from finance. We have someone from project management. We have someone from government relations. We have someone that has sales and marketing and leadership and management. So if there's an issue in labor, we turn to the labor person and we say, what do you recommend? And then when that person tells us what their knowledge base has shown them is the correct approach, we accept it because there's a faith and there's a trust and there's an understanding that the rest of us don't know, he does know, so we accept that and we move forward based on that recommendation. The same thing with our financial piece. The financial person will tell us what the appropriate steps are. We accept that and we move forward. So there's this understanding that we are stronger as a whole from the group standpoint as opposed to the individual. There's not one individual that overshadows all. I may have the title of chairman, but the 5 of us speak as one.
You know, it's just a phenomenal thought process to listen to, and we're coming to the end of the end of this segment in visiting with Larry Alexander. I want to just kind of quickly summarize the key points that Larry has shared with us. One, that the bankruptcy process for Detroit itself was really the signal and created the bottom so that people knew it was the end of the backslide, and it allowed the investment side of the opportunity to start to come to the forefront so people could recognize that the investment for here on forward was going to go up. And I think that's an important message for businesses and associations and municipalities to send that signal that things are moving forward and up. The other very significant comment that was made was the comment about diversity and the fact that diversity and the embracing of diversity by behavior, not by words, but by behavior, allows an organization to take advantage of all of its unique contributions that we have historically not always taken into account, because they then dilute out control. And truly control then becomes a matter of adding in the right values as opposed to singular voice. And then finally, as I listen to how the new decision-making model of consensus through diversity is absolutely amazing, because it starts to rewrite the management books and the leadership books on how we look at creating consensus leadership. And here we are in the city of Detroit reinventing every day, because every day we have something new to talk about that it's teaching us. Yet what we're really starting to do is completely rewrite some of the key characteristics that you've taught us today.
It's a great summation.
I want to thank you very much for your time sharing some of your observations, and I'm very hopeful we'll get a chance to do this again very, very soon.
I'll look forward to it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Larry.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pure Reinvention. Keep the conversation going and get alerts when new episodes are available by following us on Twitter at Pure Reinvention, or sign up for our mailing list at purereinvention.com.